Halfpenny, I'm the judge coordinator. I know about half of you in this room, and I think I've communicated with almost everybody in this room recently. Right here is Mary Halfpenny. She's going around and handing out the BJCP Cider score sheet. I want everybody in this room familiar with this. Anybody who's judged in this competition before, anybody who is judged in any BJCP, and yes, I'm going to say that word, Beer Judge Certification Program, are familiar with this form, but there's a lot of people new to this, and it's a really great form. It's a great tool, and it gives us a standard, a consistent standard from which we can evaluate the 531 entries that are going to be presented before us tomorrow. So we want everybody familiar with this standard, because your objective tomorrow is when that entry comes to your table and there's two of you judging, you need to give that entry its undivided attention. You need to focus on that entry. You need to give that entry your due professional focus and transfer your perceptions onto a sheet of paper that is going to be given to the person who paid money for you to tell them what you think about their entry. That's some scary shit, right? And I want you to put your email address on that form so they can challenge you if they so feel, right? It's only fair. This is only fair. So you have to give this your undivided attention. You have to give this professionalism, and this, I do this at every one of these things, right? Listen. Thank you. That's the sound of judging. It's not chatter. It's not talking. It's the sound of maybe and pencils on paper. That's what I want to hear. I want to hear that for 10 minutes. And then I want you to move on to the next one. Imagine that. 10 minutes. That should be enough time for you to pick up, to swirl, to sniff, to write impressions, to swirl, to sniff, to verify impressions, to swirl, to sniff, to taste, write impressions, to taste again and write impressions, to taste again and write impressions, and then give me an overall impression. It's laid out on that form just like that, right? From the aroma to the appearance to flavor attributes to your ultimate overall impression. Now, this competition is unlike any other competition in the world, because it is two competitions in one. We're doing non-commercial and commercial. Tomorrow when we stage this room, there are going to be 24 tables, 24 panels. The panels on that end of the room are going to be judging non-commercial entries. That's the front third, or the back third as the case may be. And this part of the room, this 2/3 of the room, is going to be doing commercial entries. The non-commercial entries are going to be given to those judges, those panels, in the bottom. Those judges are going to get a nondescript sealed bottle. You're going to open that bottle at that station and evaluate the bottle contents, the fill level. You're going to pour for yourself. Typically 2 fingers pour is all you don't have to empty the bottle onto your tube. This is not about drinking. This is more about smelling than it is about drinking. So you're going to pour yourself a couple fingers in that little cup, put the cap back on the bottle and put it aside. And then you're going to evaluate that entry. For those of you doing the commercial entries, those products came here in labeled bottles. So they're being poured in another station, and you are not allowed in there, right? The only people that are going to go to Mary, who's the cellar master, in that back room there are the stewards. There is no socializing back there. And ladies and gentlemen, there is no recreational drinking back there. You know what I mean by that? The only drinking that's going to get done is right here on the judge floor. Professional sampling. And not, oh man, they're really liking this one. And then you go back there, and I'm talking to the stewards right now, right? At the end of all this, we get to sample all that stuff. But in the beginning, for right now, this is a professional competition. We want your undivided focus. We want everything professional. Good? Everybody's on that program? So 2 competitions, non-commercial, commercial. These are going to be poured back there, brought out to these tables in glass. Every one of these tables is going to have a steward dedicated to that table. You're going to have on your table your forms, your writing utensils, your guidelines that you're going to follow to evaluate that product. Your cups and your samples are going to be brought to you at that table. You do not get up from your table for any reason except to visit one of those 2 little rooms. Other than that, you raise your hand for your steward to bring you a new pencil, sharpen your pen. Well, it's all mechanical pencils. I have pens as well. I personally prefer a pen over a pencil because I break pencil leads all the time. So you're going to have your choice, but you sit at this table. We're going to start at 10 a.m. tomorrow, and we should be done by noon, and we're going to have lunch in there. Okay? That's the goal. If you sit here and you spend 15 minutes a sample, you're missing lunch. That's your motivation and your reward. Because everybody is going to get 10 or 11 beers per flight. We're going to do 20. Yeah, I said I wasn't going to say that word. Entries. Because there is beer. There is mead. There is cider. There is distilled. There is fortified. This is a very complicated event. And that means your style guidelines. One table is going to have beer style guidelines. Several tables are going to have mead style guidelines. Most of the tables are going to have cider guidelines, and a couple of tables are going to have GLINTCAP style guidelines. And most of you that entered saw those 2006-1, 2012-1. These are categories unique to this competition, because only in this competition do we celebrate everything made with apples and pears. Everything. So we have score sheets for the beer people. We have score sheets for the mead people. We have score sheets for the cider people. We do not have score sheets for the distillates, for the fortifieds. So you're going to use cider score sheets. I noodled around. I went through the Sterling School of Spirits. I have sensory analysis training in spirits. And I went to the World Masters of Spirits, and I downloaded and made copies of their guidelines on how to sensory evaluate spirits. So those guidelines are going to be given to the spirit table. But they don't have score sheets. So you're going to use the cider score sheets, but you're going to spend a lot of attention on appearance and aroma and flavor as those guidelines operate. Now, when I talk about style guidelines, I didn't bring a set up here. And I invited everybody who entered to study the style guidelines on the BJCP website. But these style guidelines are great for what we're doing, but they're a handicap because of what we do with it. And that is to say, we evaluate entries in whatever category to a confined frame. I want you to pick one of these windows. Look at this window and look at this wood frame right here. And we're telling you that in this category 27A, the entry should smell like, look like, have this kind of body, have this kind of flavor, have this kind of finish, this kind of aftertaste, have this kind of impression. That's a handicap. Because we're saying, based on our general knowledge of the style, that a good representation of the style fits in that frame. That can sometimes mean a really good example of a product doesn't win an award because it doesn't fit that frame as nice as we would like. You are not judging to your personal preferences. You are judging to those style guidelines. You're going to read the style guidelines for the style you're judging. If it's 27A, if it's common, if it's New England, if it's French, you judge it to those standards, common or English or French, and not, ooh, I don't like this. It may have an aroma that is unpleasant to you, but if it belongs there, you score it high. Is that clear to everybody? You are judging to guidelines. You are judging to style. And that's what makes this such an interesting competition, because we're not just a beer or just a cider or just a mead competition. or all of them, all rolled up into one with one common denominator, and that's apples and pears. Mary put some score sheets out there. I want you to go over the score sheets. This is mostly for the judges, so some of the stewards, the stewards should pay attention to the far right column where the scores are, because you're going to verify the arithmetic at the table, right? The total possible score is 50 points. I'll tell you right now, there's never a 50 anything, because we all think there's a flaw somewhere, right? On the other hand, 1 is the lowest possible score, and there's no such thing as a 1. Because you know what? It's got some kind of color. It's got some kind of aroma. It's got some kind of flavor, right? So there's no 1. I think if something scores under 20, you've given that entrant a message, right? If something scores 20, you don't have to go any lower than that. That's basically saying it right there. If you have something that is on, let me say this, almost everything here should score in the 30s, because that's a good product. And I would hope that people enter good products. However, there's a couple of problems. And one is to style. People make a product, an entrant makes a product, enters it into this competition, and I think it's a New England. But in your evaluation of it, it's got these other kinds of aromas and flavors, so it better belongs in another category. So it shouldn't score well, even if you like it. If it's more French than New England, it shouldn't score well as a New England, even if you like that product, because it's not to style. Right? So are you following me on the importance of style? So you're gonna get this sheet. In the upper left corner, you see judge's name. If you're in the BJCP program, you're going to put a number there so you can get credit for this competition. And under that is your email, because we invite the participant to communicate with you on questions. I judge every year in Mexico, and I write these forms in English. So I get all kinds of questions all the time. All right? On the right side is where you're going to do all your work. At the very top of it, it says category number, subcategory number, and entry. Category is 27. Subcategory is A. Underneath it says subcategory spell out. And that's because we want you to write common cider, or what's the term here? New World Cider. New World Cider. And that's because we want to verify that you wrote, you're doing this over and over and over again. We want to make sure that the category and subcategory match what the style entered is. So we want both of those things filled out. It's number, alpha, and spell it out. And then in the box is that unique number that identifies the product in front of you in front of you for your panel. Every single entry here has a unique number that only the registration team knows, and they will take these forms and that number and they will match it up to whoever entered that product. And that's why this is a blind competition. Under that, you have carbonation level and sweetness levels. They should specify. It should be on your information. Failure to specify whether an item is carbonated or whether an item is dry or semi-dry or sweet is a disadvantage to the entrant. If they don't specify, it is a disadvantage to the entrant. Is that clear? You understand what they're told to specify? Under that, bottle inspection, that's only going to apply to the non-commercial people. They're going to look at a bottle. They're going to look at the headspace in the bottle. Is it high? Is it low? Is it appropriate? They're going to look to see if there's floaties in the bottle. Is there a ring in the bottle? Is there particulate in the bottle? What's the yeast condition like? Is it floaty? Is it loose? Is it packed? And they're going to note those kind of things on this. For the rest of us, you're not going to see a bottle. Special ingredients. That's going to come for some of the ingredients in the meads, the ciders, and even the beer, where somebody made this using this kind of apple or this kind of process, and they are going to specify. If they do not specify, and it is in a category like Mellow, where they're supposed to specify the fruit, and they don't specify the fruit, that entrant is at a disadvantage because they're told to specify the fruit. Appearance. That's a clear one. or a cloudy one, right? You hold it up, you look at the light, and you give me a profile, an observational profile of what you see. What color, what's the color? What's the clarity? What's the carbonation? What color is the carbonation? Big bubble, large bubble, fine bubble, no bubble, petalent. And grade it accordingly, and then when you do, you should compare your observation to what they said on carbonation. Did they hit it or did they miss it? Because if they missed it, that's a disadvantage. If they say it's petalent and it's highly carbonated, you score it lower. Clear? Bouquet and aroma. This is the big cheese. And when you look at this thing, here's where and you see that it says expression of other ingredients as appropriate. Appropriate for style. Swirl, sniff, swirl, sniff. I don't think I need to explain that to this audience, but it's very, very important. And you know, you see there's several blank lines. An ideal score sheet has something written on every one of those lines. A terrible score sheet says nice, because that doesn't convey a message at all, right? Or get another hobby, because we don't do that either. We don't condemn anything under any circumstance. No matter what we think of it, we try to say it in a positive manner. You should look at sanitization procedures. You should use less sanitization because I get chlorophenols, or I get chlorine, or I get iodophor. I'm picking up these kind of medicinal, rubbery Band-Aid notes that are inappropriate to the style. Write that down there. But as we write down the negatives, remember to also write the positives. Wonderful fruit. Strong, assertive note of the special ingredients. And when there are special ingredients, note this. You should perceive them. In the case of an apple cider, you're judging apples. But in the case of a cider with another special ingredient in it, like cranberries, you should note cranberry. But if that product is red, smells only of cranberries, and is so astringent and tart that you don't get apple, that's a negative, because the cranberry is overpowering the apple juice. You want to taste the base product. You want to taste the cider and what the additional ingredient or additional process is doing to enhance the complexity of that product. Right? And you want to judge accordingly. Good, bad, indifferent. Low, great, high. Write that. Share those observations with the person who made this entry. Flavor. This is the part you're waiting for. And you know what? For me, it's all about aroma. I get that aroma, I know what I'm going to taste. And then you're going to back that up with the flavor. Right? We're looking, you know what the tongue is capable of. Sweet, salty, sour, and bitter. Everything else, umami, and everything else comes from the nose. So if you've got anything to say about flavor, it's going to come from the nose. Because there's a little bit of sweetness. There may be some bitterness. There may be some sourness. There may even be some saltiness. Write those things down. But give us your overall impression. And a big part of flavor is aroma on the back of the throat. Post-nasal, down here. Overall impression. This is where you get to say, wow, I really like this, but I think you can improve on it if you did this. Or you know what? I think you should have entered this in another style, where I think I would have scored it higher. Share your impressions to assist the entrant in winning this category next year or scoring higher next year. Then remember to score. 6, 10, 24, 10, add up to 50. There is no 50, there is no 1. I basically look at 25 as an average. Anybody's going to get a 25. Anybody who makes a product for this competition can get a 25 unless there's something wrong. And I would say that most of the products in this competition are going to score 30 plus. So I would start there. And everything good about it goes higher. We're going to award medals based on the lower left box. Anything that scores 30 to 37. See that lower left box? 30 to 37, those are bronze medals. It's a good product. Congratulations. This is a solid product. Follow the information on this form, and maybe next year you can do better. Anybody who scores 38 to 44, and there should be a lot of them. Some of you in this room think there should be a lot of them, right? I should get at least a silver medal, because you're damn proud of your creation. So we should be fighting 30s, 37, 38 to 44s, and when that product is, you can't do anything, I want to buy this, I want to share this, I would take this home. This is the stuff. That's a 45. Nobody ever does. Rarely we see 46s or 47s. But you know what? It's hard to give a 45 because all of us in this room are going to be really critical. I've worked with judges for 17 years, and you guys are critical. It's easy to look for flaws. It's much harder to find the benefits, the goodness. Now here's the thing. And then add those things up and put your score in the lower corner. Double check your arithmetic. Stewards, when you get these sheets, and I'm going to talk about that in a second, double check the arithmetic. Because these scores determine the medal. Right? We can't have a set of sheets, go back to Eric, enter it into a database, and shows a score of 37, and the guy gets a bronze, but when the guy gets his sheets back and he adds them, and he will, and he has a 39, he should have got a silver, hell's gonna pay. Right? To Eric, not to me. Eric's got a thankless job. He's done a lot of work. He's located himself in that far back room, and he does not want to be disturbed. So don't go back there. Mary's back there with all the stewards trying to pour blind, which means none of you as judges go into that room. Right? You don't have any business seeing what's back in that room. Stewards, when you go back in the room, no recreational drinking. Do your job. Save the drinking for the end of the day. You see there's a whole list of things on the left side. Those are things for you to remark on. And you can use those check boxes at will for anything that you think is too sour, too alcoholic, too astringent, diacetyl, very common. You know, I love buttery Chardonnays, like the grape did that. That's a fermentation thing. Okay. Any questions on the site, on the score sheet? There was one right there.
Yeah, I just guys, at least this is my opinion, this is an objective endeavor. So if your inclination is to tell somebody they need to clean better, make sure you actually know, right? If you don't understand their process, I would mark down the product, but I would not personalize it with commentary on how they might run their business or run their, be careful of that, because I know we're all in industry somehow, we've all done something, but if you don't understand the shoes that someone else is walking in, tell them how that reflects itself to you. Don't necessarily assume you understand how it got there, because there's a lot of different ways people can get to some of these taste profiles, and I've always found the more objective and the less subjective you are in your findings, the better off I think it comes out.
Don't guess. Doesn't do anybody any good to guess.
I mean, you're here to judge the fluid, not to judge the process.
We're here to evaluate.
Describe what you're sensing.
We're here to evaluate.
Troubleshooting is tricky for somebody.
It is.
Yes.
Are we averaging score on an entry?
I'll get to that.
Okay.
More questions specific to the form.
I was going to say, maybe if there's any clarification on your point of being 25 is a good base. And I think having done this for a number of years and entered products and seen how our own products are judged, I've noticed that 25 is because there are certain things that are flat objective that don't require your opinion. I've had a product where or score sheets in the past where we're saying, hey, this is petulant, this is medium golden color, and it's brilliant to clear you're brilliant. And you end up getting a 4 out of 6. And I remember in some of your pre-instruction in the past, where you say, look, if those 3 things exist and it's within a style, you don't have to be afraid to put down a 6, because it is objectively clear that that is a perfect representation of what you said it was going to be. And I found a lot where it's like, okay, we got a 4. Well, why did we get a 4? We told you it was this, this, and this, and it is, and you maybe even remarked it. I think people maybe have an inert sense that, boy, a 6 seems perfect, and I don't feel like it should be perfect.
It gets to the criticalness of judging, and I don't even like the word judging, I like evaluation. This is about sensory evaluation. To your point, don't be afraid to score. And appearance is the easiest one in the world to do. It's worth the fewest amount of points, too, because it's the easiest one to do. So if you give it a 4 or a 5 out of a 6, it's because it is slightly hazy, should be bright. Write that. So he knows why you gave it that. Or it's too carbonated. Or whatever. Right? Or you had a floaty in your glass and you don't think that floaty should have been there. I got a product recently where I pulled off the cap and it had black in the cap. And I looked at it and I poured it and I shared it with Mary, and this black came out, and we discerned that that product benefited by the use of some food coloring. Right? It was darkened. It was darkened because when they made that, and that was a beer, when they made that beer, it didn't meet my spec on the style. It was made for me. They didn't meet the spec on the style, so they darkened it using an additive. It's food grade additive, but it's still, I threw it away. It's not what I want. Good point. Don't be afraid to score. More questions? Yes.
You mentioned the descriptors on the side. Are they only to be used in a negative way or in a descriptive and neutral way?
Any way you want. They're for you to use as a resource. And you're gonna, those of you, how many new judges in the room? There's a bunch of them. The new judges in the room, this sheet is going to get faster and faster as you learn the sheet. And you know what? Don't be afraid, because you're going to judge a flight, and you could be judging 27A 10 times. Don't be afraid to say the same thing over and over and over again. Clear, bright, beautiful, golden. I mean, don't think that, wow, I said that last time. It's what it is.
I have a question,
Yes.
Rex. As a first-time judge here, I wish I would be paired with an experienced judge
You will be.
so I can exchange comments with the experienced judge on what I'm judging. Will that happen?
Yes.
Okay.
There is no team of 2 inexperienced judges. But I am a little bit light on the experience, so there will be some weaker tables and some stronger tables, and all that's been taken into consideration. Yes.
One thing to add onto the question on these descriptors, as we go into the second part of the day today, you will be tasting ciders where a given descriptor, I sort of said this before, a given descriptor may describe a characteristic which is a fault in one style, an attribute, a positive attribute in another style, or it may be positive or negative depending on how much you perceive. But if it's something that kind of stands out to you, like acidity, then mark that checkbox.
I've got a couple more forms to go over and we can get back to tasting. Any more questions? Is everybody, it's a pretty simple form. And if you follow the form, it walks you right through the evaluation process. All you got to do is follow the form. Very, very simple. The hard part is to get through the sniffing and the tasting and the writing within 10 minutes. It's enough time, believe me. It is plenty of time to do the job. But it's very easy to basically sit there and think about yesterday, or think about tomorrow, or think about the family, or think about dinner, or think about, you know what, and the day whiles away. Or it's very easy to engage in conversation because it's cute, it's funny, right? But it takes away from the subject at hand. Yes, Tom?
I could very easily be wrong, but personally, that lower left box is a critical element in judging. You're judging, you've reached your scores, and you look at it, you look at the panel and say, is this really a world-class example, or is this really looking at that and say, well, we judged it low, this is really a terrific product, it really deserves a silver medal, or this really isn't a terrific product, and we judged that the numbers came up silver. We want to reevaluate. I'm not saying what we should do, but that for me is a guiding light.
Let me expand on that now, because every team is a two-person panel. I have a couple of extra walk-in judges for somebody who doesn't show up. If everybody shows up, we may have a 3 or 2 3-person panels. But we pulled this off in a very short period of time. And I'm very happy to get 24 two-person panels. Not my favorite. I prefer 3-person panels. I prefer a tiebreaker, and I prefer panels where there's not an alpha dog and a newbie, to your point. Because the newbie will concede to the alpha judge. Every single opinion is valid. Every single one of you is a human instrument capable of detecting parts per million and parts per billion. Write it down. Give us your feedback. You do yours, you do yours. When both pencils hit the table, you're done writing, you then engage in a short, deliberate, focused conversation. You like the product, you say why. You didn't like the product so much, you say why. You either convince her or you convince him, and one or the other of you raises or lowers your score accordingly to where both scores are within 6 points of each other. That sounds easy, but believe me, it's not. Some of you are going to hit it just like that. You're both going to score it. Somebody's going to be 38, somebody's going to be 37. Your biggest problem is, do we bump it to silver or do we keep it in bronze? Have that discussion. Have that discussion. But be ready to compromise. If you're 8 points away, come down 2 points, come up 2 points. Call it even. Move on. Right? Move on. The person who entered is going to get both opinions. He's going to say, this guy was just the opposite of this person. But you know what? That's the nature of subjective sensory analysis. Every one of us are calibrated differently, and we're going to pick up everything different. Some of us are going to be more susceptible to something. Some of us are going to be desensitized to something. Somebody here will be a little bit more stuffed up tomorrow than another person here. We're all on a biorhythm. Some people are going to be on. Some people are going to be slightly off. There's good days to be a judge. There's bad days to be a judge. The best time to evaluate beer? 10 a.m. Well after breakfast, before the afternoon doldrums, before lunch, and not so early that you've got coffee and bacon on the breath. Right? 10 a.m. That's ideal. The problem is we can't do 531 entries at 10 a.m. So it's going to be a long day, 2 hours in the morning. We're going to break for lunch, 2 hours in the afternoon. I think it's going to go fast. 2-person panels. There's only 2 of you writing. Keep up with each other. Have a little discussion. Compromise. And then when you have your score, you have your score. A 38 and a 40. And if you're compromising, you just split the difference. Add the 2 together. Split the difference, and you write it on this sheet. This sheet, top box, is the entry number. That's the same entry number on your score sheet. And then the second box is your assigned score. Then you take your 2 score sheets and the cover sheet, give it an assigned score, and set it aside. Stewards are going to double check the arithmetic, but leave those here until the entire flight of 10 or 11 is completed. When the entire flight is completed, then as you're going, the table captain, the first person on the judge panel, is going to keep track of everything you judged. Who you are, what you judged, and the order you judged them, and your final assigned score. That's not your score or your score, but it's the final assigned score. Now, when you look at your final assigned scores and you decide, okay, here's my golds, here's my silvers, here's my bronzes, you may then decide, you know what? That silver over there should get a bronze. You do not have to change your score sheets. You change the assigned score. Just this one score. Change this and bump that person up the point or two or whatever you need to do to give that person the medal you want that person to be awarded. Yes?
If you do change the scores in that fashion, please initial it so we recognize as the people that are double checking the arithmetic that it was intentional and not just a slip of the pencil or an arithmetic error. Because otherwise we'll send it back to the table and say, is this what you wanted to do?
Guess who's double checking all your arithmetic? Just like last year.
Just like that.
Just like last year.
So
Any,
if you let us know, we just don't will pester you again.
this sheet, we all dealt with. We've always dealt with this sheet. This sheet is new. This is Eric's sheet. He wants this done. I think for Eric's purposes, you decide, by the way, you're going to get a flight sheet. You can decide the order that you're going to evaluate those products. But they're probably going to come out to you in the order of that flight sheet unless you specify with your steward differently. And then you're going to keep track of everything you evaluated and what your scores were on this sheet. So at the end of the flight, you've got 2 score sheets, a cover sheet 10 times, and this on top. And all those sheets are in this order. And it goes back as a completed flight. When your flight is complete, and your arithmetic has been verified, excuse yourself from the judging room and move over all of 20 feet into the other room. But keep this in mind. As long as there's somebody judging in here, you should be on your best behavior. Keep your roaring laughter to a minimum. These people are still concentrating. And at the end of the morning session, after 10 samples, especially at the end of the afternoon session when we do the stronger samples, in the morning we do the weaker stuff, the afternoon we do the stronger stuff, it's very easy for the decibel level in this room to start increasing. Because you can no longer hear each other unless you're talking like this. And when you start talking like this, it gets very loud in here. Remove yourself from the judging area, move into the dining area, and try to keep, we're in one big room, so there's going to be some conversation, but at least take it out of the judging area. Any questions?
Well, I think it's important to note that there may be multiple judging panels working on the same category. Because I actually don't like that list because I think it puts pressure on the judges to award a gold per flight, right? It's not, I mean, I think it's important we talk about that. It's not the role of every 2-person panel to find a gold, a couple silvers, and bronzes. It's to judge the liquid on its own benefit, right?
You want to address that? I don't think it's a problem. Does everybody understand that? You're gonna evaluate all of these things to score, and your scores determine the medal. And there's not a gold, a silver, and a bronze. There's as many golds and silver and bronzes as we come up with. There can be, and I've monitored this for the last 9 years, and you know what? The pyramid is stable. There's more of these and fewer of these and fewest of these. But I have noticed that the bronzes are not as big a base as it used to be. And the silvers are becoming a larger base. And that means the entries are improving. And I think that's why we have competitions. Competitions doesn't mean this guy's product is great and this guy's product is bad. Because I've been to a lot of competitions where there's products that don't win awards that are really worth your attention. But they are a good method of measuring somebody else's objective blind opinion to use in your sensory tasting, in your rooms, in your businesses, to learn about what judges are looking for. And you have access to the style guidelines, so you can look at those things and agree or disagree. Somebody?
Back directly to Bruce's question, no, you don't need to feel compelled to have a gold in your flight. I know that some people come in with that expectation, but no, you don't. And particularly in one of the categories like 27A, where there may be half a dozen tables judging it, don't feel like if you don't give a gold that there won't be any golds in that category. You're judging to style. If you find a gold, if you find 5 golds, that'd be pretty unusual, but
And you'd be really lucky.
yeah, because you'd be drinking a lot of good cider.
Yeah.
Okay, good one. I could spend a lot of time talking about sensory evaluation and ideal conditions, and the room we're in is not ideal. Right? There's food prep right back there. The lighting's not great. The carpet's the wrong color. There's yellow on the walls. There's red on the walls. An ideal judging environment is white ceilings, white light, white carpet, white linen, white paper. So we can really see color. We can see clarity. And that is removed from what we're doing. The other thing is the tools. I think we've got the tools. We're providing all those tools. By the way, the non-commercial are going to be, you're going to use cups like we do in most non-commercial. The commercial is all going to be served in glass. Okay, so you're going to be served glassware. A really big issue with the stewards in this room is transference. Transference of tobacco, transference of perfume, transference of soap, transference of whatever neat, sweet smelling stuff women keep in their purses. And every time you go into that bag and you bring your hand out of that bag and you grab a glass like this, I don't have a glass to pick up, but don't hold glassware like that in the back room or here. Always pick it up from the base of the glass. Avoid transference. Transference can come from the use of wooden pencils. Wooden pencils are made of cedar. Cedar has an aroma. That transfers to your product. Tobacco has an aroma. It transfers to the product. Perfumes, the soap in the restrooms. All of these things transfer to the product. Be cautious about where you're holding that. Some people like to judge using the closed cup method, where they put their hand over the cup and they swirl, and then they go, and they smell all the tobacco and soap and purse smells from their hand, right? That's all the and there's some people in here who are going to do that anyway, and that's fine. You know, I could do a talk about the drive-by. I can do the I don't care how you do it, but you do that a bunch of times and learn, study what's in there. Look for the things that are in there and note those things.
Rex?
But beware of transference.
Something you can get a neutral something to hold over it.
I use I'm
I'm
guilty of the covered glass. I use an empty cup. On judging day, I actually just get an extra plastic cup and put it over it.
Swirl coats the inside of that glass with the liquid and expands the surface to air ratio. So a good swish and your nose in there. Wine people have done it for years. Beer people are learning to do that, provided we take it out of the 12-ounce can, right? I mean, that's the first step. Get it out of the can so that we can see it, so we can swirl it. But swirl and sniff. Doesn't do you any good to swirl and talk. You need to swirl right now. I swirl so often, my water gets swirled. I can be in a restaurant doing this, just because my hand wants to do this all the time with any liquid I have in my hand. And you know what? Water's different. There's water I won't drink because of the chlorine, right? And we've got well water. So I drink primarily RO water. Pretty neutral stuff. Any more questions? I know these guys have a lot more stuff to talk about. I really appreciate the fact that you're all here. This is a very prestigious competition. I'm honored to be a part of it. I love the fact that we have representation from as far away as Europe, from coast to coast. We have entries from all over the world. And you know what? We couldn't do it with every single volunteer in this room. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and your energy.